welcome to another session. Today, we are still learning how to use OpenCV and do wonderful things with it. So, uh, we'll continue with our projects. We'll move on to the fourth project today. If you can remember, we looked at some basic operations with OpenCV. Then we did some carried out some tasks like resizing, know, getting image and writing to disk. That's uploading the image to your whatever platform you're using, whatever ID you're using, and then writing it to your local device, revising whatever image you're using, adding shapes and text to images. So today we'll be looking at the first project. Very simple project, very basic project. But it will be the first structure project we'll do today. So we're looking at an interactive canvas, right? Using OpenCV. So we're going to use the picture we used earlier. Please, if you've not, if you don't know the picture we used earlier, I'll just show you shortly. Uh, it's Messi's Ballon d'Or. Sorry, my head has been just a bit fuzzy. Messi's Ballon d'Or picture. So let me show it to you. So this is the picture, and what we'll be doing will be looking at drawing bounding box around the pictures, several bounding boxes around the pictures, interactive boxes around the pictures. So with OpenCV. So that's what we are going to do today. First of all, we'll load our image. Remember, we've learned how to do that already. We'll get a copy of the image. We'll see why we'll do that shortly. Then of course it's always good practice when you're carrying out larger projects, always get copies of whatever you're importing, so that when you're manipulating it, the original is still there untouched. And you can go back and do any changes and you will lose the original. Then of course, remember that we are using the mouse to drag. What happens when we click, right? Our mouse events. What happens? How does our mouse event work, right? What happens when we are just scrolling without doing anything? Probably I'm just scrolling like this. I'm not doing anything, right? And then what happens when I click? Remember that how do we draw bounding boxes? You click and you drag, you click and you drag. So what happens when we click, and what happens when do we stop, right? So and then what happens if you want to clear the screen? Probably I found out that I don't want this again. So how do I clear the screen? All right, so we're going to do that now. All right, so let's quickly go to our IDE and start. All right, so this was okay. I think this was what we did last time. So let's create a new file. So let's just call this interactive image. All right, .py. Okay, so just the basics. So you can just copy this from here. All right, so I won't need to write that again. Just housekeeping. Take this. I don't need this. So what am I doing here? I'm simply taking my image, and then I am I'm taking my image. Then I am sorry. Let me just get settled here. I'm taking my importing CV2, and then I'm getting my image in here. So right, so first of all, let's copy our image. So if just copy. This is the one we are going to display, right? Or let's just call it base image, right? That it will be im.copy, right? So that being done, let's create a window, right? Let's create a window. So cv2 dot named, you understand why we're creating this window later. It's just a decoy, right? So named window. What am I going to create? Call the window that I'm displaying. So I'm going to call it a drawing window. Just call it drawing window. So this, what does this do? This creates an OpenCV window that you display image and receive mouse inputs. All right, so that has been done. So now we are going to work on the mouse. Go to step 2, which was register mouse click and create window. Created the window. Now we want to register mouse click. What happens when we click our mouse, right? So let's register a mouse click, right? All right. So how do we do that? cv2 dot, whenever we are looking for mouse events, right, we use set mouse events. Remember, we can also have keyboard events, right? Can also have keyboard events, but here is set mouse callback. What happens when you want to what happens when you click your mouse, what do you get back? So what do we get back? I'll just call it drawing window. You see this in a minute. And then I think to make it easy, because we have a lot to do, we have to tell it what to do when it's not moving. You have to tell it what to do when you click. You have to tell it what to do when it drags. So let's just call this handle mouse. Sorry. Mouse events, right? Which is going to be a function which we are going to create up here. Ref handle mouse events. Then we pass. Right. So that being done, we'll come back and fill that. What do we do next? Ask ourselves, what happens when do you want to close the window? So we're going to set, normally when we're using OpenCV, what we do is that we normally set a key that when you press it, your window, the window that popped up, for drawing, the window that showed that image, if you don't want to use the X to close it because you want to keep running it, you can set a key that once you press it, the it will just stop whatever event it does and then close that window, right? It's more like a force stop, right? So now generally you can use any key. Sometimes some people use escape, some people use delete, but most people normally use the Q key. So we are going to use the Q key here. So while we have that our key pressed is not equal to Q, but what you cannot just write a Q. We have to change it to the ASCII for Q, right? Because that is what the computer understands. And the ASCII for Q is 113. Please take note. What happens, right? So now, while key press is not 113, so for this to work, we have to just put a dummy as initialization. So let's just call key pressed is equal to 0, right? As you get you just understand it better, right? So while the key press is not equal to 113, right? While that's while this means that while the Q key is not pressed, right? And what will happen is if right if we are not dragging, right? If there's no rectangle is currently being drawn, right? If no rectangle is currently being drawn, as you go on, we'll come back to this. What will happen? Remember, this is just a um, skeletal design. If no rectangle is being drawn, right? That's if you are just moving your mouse, right? So what will happen is that cv2 dot im show drawing window. Now remember I said that drawing window is just a dummy. We are calling everything drawing the window so that while there may be different windows that are popping up, the person that is seeing all of them are drawing windows. So it will look as if it is the same window. You see, if this is as it comes back while it keeps drawing a new window and drawing a new window and drawing a new window, but all the windows look similar. So it looks as if it's the same thing, but however, they are simply drawing new windows. So what are we going to display? We're going to show the original image, which we've not tossed yet. Now, when we've done that, we will now wait for some seconds again and then check again whether they've done anything has been pressed. So key pressed. Now what does this do? Let me just write this so you understand. What does this do? This is it waits for 20 milliseconds, right? And then stores whatever key is pressed. And then when it comes back, it will check this. As long as this is more like regurgitate, so when it comes back, you check, oh, is this key pressed? Is it Q? Right? And so on and so forth. So now, why did I do this? Because there are two keys I need to check. One of them is I want to close the window entirely. Another one is the third criteria here. I want to what happens when I clear the screen. So what key what key will show that I want all the boxes to be cleared. I want to draw new boxes, right? So I'll just set it as C. When I press the C key on my keyboard, it means that I want to clear all the initial boxes I had drawn and then have a new slate. So if key pressed, let's go to this. All right, so because the ASCII for C is 99. Please, you can just check the these ASCIIs online. The ASCIIs for different letters, in case you don't want to use the generic letters that you don't want to use the letters that I'm using in this our example. So what happened is our image will be equal to base whatever we had as our base image. Text goes back to your conventional image. All right. So now, and what does it do again? Now this is, I think we can just stop here. Then what it will do is we will show our windows, because we'll come back and fill this up. Show. Seeing how many times we've done drawing window. All right. So it's what happens here is that once you get the C key, simply goes to this image that he had copied and kept, it was untouched. To copy back and then call it image, right? To call it image, that means discard the old one. This one that you are changing, and this one was unchanged. So he copies it and this is still unchanged, and then assigns the copy to this. So what is showing is just basically a copy of the untouched image you have saved here. Anytime 99 is pressed. All right. So that being said, we can do our normal housekeeping, which is cv2 dot destroy window or windows, right? This is very necessary for all computer vision task when you are using displayed images, right? So there are some things here that we've not defined. It does not understand what is dragging is, right? So we have to look for a way and define that. And then what happens here, what happens within the function. So this is how it works. What happens when you click, when you want to drag? So let me just use this, right? So now, first of all, I click, right? That is the important thing. And then I drag. There are two things. First of all, I click. Where I click is going to be the coordinate of the top left, and then I drag. Where I stop dragging, that is where I unclick. Let me do that again. I come here, I click, right? I drag and I unclick. So there are two events I'm looking at: when my mouse is pressed and when my mouse is unpressed. I should take the coordinates of those two locations. And of course, you know that once I have the coordinate of any location, right? When I have the coordinate of any location of two corners, I can draw a rectangle. So that is just the basic thing we are going to do. However, remember that we want the drawing to be dynamic, right? Just the way it's being done here. He did not wait till I got here before I drew my rectangle. He kept drawing it as we were going. So as my mouse is moving, it should be picking the particular position that my mouse is, and then add it with this initial start position that it had taken, right? Add it to initial start position that it had taken, and then be drawing. So it keeps drawing and drawing. It keeps drawing repeatedly as long as I am dragging this rectangle. It draws, destroys, draws, destroys, draws, destroys. As long as we keep doing this. So that is what we are going to implement right now. I hope you understand. Please, if you don't understand, just put in the chat. I'm going to look at it. So let's do that. But there are some things we have to check. First of all, um for us to draw a rectangle, we need the starting coordinates, that's the start corners, and we also need the that's the top left, and we also need the bottom left corners. So we have start corner coordinates, right? So it's rather long name, but let's just so it will be empty at first. Then we also need the end corner coordinates, which will also be empty. Right, so we have the start corner coordinate and also have the end corner coordinate, which should be empty. Then now, is it dragging? That's the thing. Are you dragging or not? If it is dragging, it has to check. Remember that your mouse is dragging, your mouse is always moving. That means it is dragging. Now it has to check if there is something in this start coordinates. That means it is dragging after I had clicked. But if there's nothing here, your mouse movement is, if there's nothing here, that means I have not clicked yet, it should not draw. So we need to know whether we are actually dragging the mouse. When we now know whether we are dragging the mouse, we now ask ourselves now, do we have something in this start coordinates? To know whether we are dragging after we clicked, we pressed our mouse down, or we are dragging after we have pressed our mouse down. So initially, we are assuming that we will not drag, so is dragging will be false. That is where the is dragging we had in this other part came from, right? That if it is there is no dragging, that is merely you start, it's going to draw this window for you with the image. All right, so whenever we are dragging and within and it's false, that's we are not dragging, it's we are our hands are just there, we are just looking at the screen. It should just show us the image without any drawing on it. Okay, beautiful. Or whatever image it has gotten up to that point. So now right, so where is the mouse position? So we just call this active where is the mouse position initially. So let's just assume that it's at 0 0. Why is this important? I had explained earlier that unlike a situation where you want to draw a rectangle after we have unclicked, here we want to be dynamically, sorry for my English, in a dynamic way be drawing the rectangles. So you want at every point you want to know where the mouse is so that we can put hinge it with the start corner the start corner coordinate and then draw our rectangle. Beautiful. So that being said, so those are our constants. We just call them our constants. Then we'll now look at how we are going to handle the mouse events. Now, what will be here? First of all, we'll take the mouse event, which is basic for any function that has to do with mouse events, right? Then we need to know where the mouse is, the mouse X, and we need to know where the mouse Y is, right? And then we also need to, I think that's basically everything we need. So let's just keep this for simple for now. what happens. So we want to make this global. So global start corner. This is a simple project. So we want this. We should be able to right. So um, it's dragging this. Then we also need to know if our image at every point in time, and then um, our base image. Right. So please, you can always do this, modularize better. Of course, global is not always the best. I leave that to you to modularize better. But if you think we should try that, just put in the chat and I can modularize that better. All right. So now, what happens when the mouse is pressed down? So what happens when the mouse is pressed down? So if mouse event, right? Let's go to cv2 dot um right. So let button down and let button up. So we are interested in let button down. So what will happen? So is dragging is automatically true, right? Because it's not possible for us to touch the let button without dragging it, so we don't need to say, oh, we have to wait for the mouse to move again. So it's automatically true. Then our start coordinates will now be that location, right? It will be our mouse X and our mouse Y. Okay, beautiful. So what next do we need? What will now be our now active mouse position will now be wherever the mouse is. Wherever the mouse is. So we're going to take this and it's going to be our mouse X at that point. That where your mouse is where you just have a dot there, just like we drew this here. Remember that when you start here, that position where that plus is the starting and the ending point until you move. But originally, while you are there, everything is at the same point. All right, so that's what I'm trying to say. So it will just be the same thing as this. To just be the same thing as this. All right. So now what if my mouse is moving? So what happens when mouse is moving? Right, and dragging is active. Right, you've clicked and then you moved your mouse. Right, now what happens? What happens as if mouse, so let's just use elif since you have the if already. So elif mouse event cv2 dot event mouse move. Right, you can see mouse wheel, we have mouse move. Once it is moving, right, we need to check something else. If the dragging is true, if dragging is true, right? If the dragging is true, if dragging, right? Is dragging, is it dragging? And also, remember we are saying this is active, but we want to be sure that you had clicked it. Had you clicked it before, right? So if you had clicked it before, you have clicked it for, definitely something will be inside this, otherwise there will be nothing there. So what will happen is that we'll create um a temporary copy of the original image, right? And they will now draw a rectangle on it, right? That is what will keep showing. So we'll create a temporary. Right. So that means temp. Let's just call it temp. The temporary image should be our. All right. So will now draw a rectangle on this image. So we'll now say CV2 dot. Remember we learned how to draw rectangle. I said we use rectangle. So you give it the image, of course, it will be your temporary image. Then you give it the bounding box, which should be where the start image is and where the is dragging is. So we'll now have this as where the start. Where the start coordinate is, right? Just the first member of that. And then we also have where your mouse is at the moment, right? The active mouse position. So this is equal to this. And this is equal to this. Right, which is just, you can just copy whatever is here. So this is what we now use and draw. Right, that's just how you draw a rectangle. Then of course you can just make it beautiful by just adding color to it. So we just make it green. 2550, and then just other features like the thickness, right? Okay, so that being said, we've gotten to that point. So what do we do now? Well, this is now what you are going to show. So we now say CV2 dot what im show. This is now what we are going to show. Then again, we are showing a new image, but we are still calling what drawing window, so that we give the people the impression that it is the same window that is still popping up, but in reality it's not the same window. So that being done, and then what do we show? We have temporary image. Beautiful. Now I think with that we've gotten to a greater part of the work. What have we not done? I think we've done everything. We've looked at where we have the weight is pressed, and we've looked at where it's moved. So when it's not pressed at all, I think this was where we had it. So if it's not dragging, right, that is, you've not quitted and it's not dragging, you just show this, right? But as long as it's dragging, remember that it's not possible for us to have this dragging and not have this. That is why because we had already made it through here. Okay, beautiful. So that being said, so at this point there is something we want here. So if I want to clear everything, what I do is I take it back to the base image. This is what I'll show, the base image. Then after that, what do? I now clear, I now reset everything. So our start coordinates will be this again, and then your end will be this again. Remember, it was global, so it has changed. It had changed. I think that's everything. So I hope you understand every section of this code. It's a very, very simple algorithm. So we are going to run it and hope that we don't run into errors, right? All right, so let's just run this and see if we have it. All right, so we have this. Then okay, so I think I just press Q. It said text 3 positional events, handle mouse events, but 5 were given. All right, because this automatically takes, we said it should take 5, but there are other so let's just call, yeah, this event from the mouse comes with 5 events automatically. So we have this as mouse flag. I just removed it because it's not necessary. This is just part of all mouse events. We just add it as just part of all mouse events. So I removed it because it's useless, but computer just said it should be there, so let's just put it there. So we have mouse flags and we also have extra arguments which we will not use. The computer just expects it to be there. So let's just run this again and see what other problem we'll run into. So you can see you have this here, right? You have this here and you have this here. Now I notice that while it's dragging, it does not stay when I leave. It does not stop when I leave, right? So there's something wrong. That means I did not put mouse up. So we have to go back to the code. So I'm pressing Q. I'll have to go back to the code and determine where I should have added mouse up, and I did not. All right. So we made 3 events. One of them was when we are moving, when it's buttoned down, and we need one more. So what happens when mouse is released, right? So what we do is that elif mouse event is equal to cv2 dot event. So the other one was mouse up, so this one should be it was down before, so this should be up. All right, of course the dragging will return back to what? False. At that point we know that we are not holding and dragging any longer. We are not holding and dragging any longer. Remember, we made it true before because we holding and dragging, right? So we are not holding and dragging any longer. So that being said, is dragging is made false, and then we now add an end corner. Now add an end corner coordinates, which will be equal to basically the same thing here. Right, basically the same thing here. So once we do that, we now create our rectangle. Right, at this point we are now using the image. Our image is no more the temporary. Now why did we use the temporary here? Because we keep changing it. Remember that the mouse is moving. As the mouse moves, we'll be changing the image, so it will look as if it is happening simultaneously. But once you get here, you don't want to change don't want to change it again as the mouse is moving. You do not want to change it. You want it to be steady. So you simply drawing on the original image. So here we draw it here on that original image. Remember that we have a copy of this that we've not changed, which is the base image. Okay, so we have this as our start corner, which is the coordinates. Then we have this and we have this, and we just basically the same thing. So, and then of course we do our show again. Remember that we are still calling it drawing window, so that whoever is using this has the impression that it is basically the window. You can see how many windows we've changed. We keep changing windows and drawing new ones, but the person that is using it, just like when I just implemented recently, you saw that you could not notice because it's in 20 milliseconds. It's too fast for our natural eyes. You will not see that we are changing the we are changing the windows. All right, so let's just run this now. So this goes and stops, this goes and stops, this goes and stops. Right, the old one is still there. So if I press C, I'm about to press C, everything goes because of this if statement here, that if there's a C here, everything goes up. So the question I have for you, which I want you to answer, is why is it, if you notice that we are here, when we draw, right, when we draw again, this one goes off while we are drawing but comes on again after we are finished drawing. You can see it goes off. All this goes off when we are drawing but comes on when we stop drawing. So why does this happen? The answer could be related to the temp image we did. So I want you to try to tell me the reason why that happened, and you could suggest how that could be solved. All right, so thank you very much. That's the end of this practice project. So if there's any thing you don't understand, let me know. I'm going to put this code in the chat, the link to the entire code in the chat, but I want you to try it yourself and see how you will do it. So thank you very much. In the next, we'll take another project in the next video, and I promise you that it's going to be a very, very interesting one. So we'll look at something more challenging, We'll do something more challenging with OpenCV. I love computer vision, so do something more challenging, something more interesting. I'm just excited because of the next project that we'll be taking on. Right, so we're going to see in the next video. Please don't forget to also like and share this video for everybody to see. Thank you.